Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about that moment that catches your breath, the one where someone from your past suddenly reaches out. Maybe it's a message, maybe a call, maybe just their name lighting up your screen after all this time. And in an instant, every feeling you thought you buried comes rushing back. Your heart remembers even when your mind tries to stay quiet, but in that emotionally charged space, there's a choice to be made. Not about them, but about how you respond, because the most important question isn't do I still feel something? It's why are they here now, and what are they really offering? Tonight, we're going to talk about how to protect yourself from confusing emotional chemistry with real intent, how to separate what you feel from what's actually true, and why that difference can save you from stepping back into something that never truly grew. A message is not a commitment. It's easy to forget that when you're craving connection, when silence has become the new normal and you've finally adjusted to life without them, even the smallest notification can feel like hope knocking. A simple "hey" or "just thinking about you" can carry so much weight, not because of what it says, but because of what we want it to mean. We read between the lines. We replay old conversations. We imagine scenarios where this message is the beginning of something new. We fill in the gaps with longing and nostalgia, hoping this time it's different, this time they're different, but the danger lies in the way our minds assign significance to something that might be empty. A message is easy to send, it costs nothing, it doesn't require courage, effort, or change, it doesn't undo the silence that came before it, it doesn't rewrite the hurt, the confusion, or the reasons the relationship ended. And yet we treat it like a lifeline. Why? Because we want closure, we want reassurance, we want to believe that the love we gave wasn't forgettable, that maybe, just maybe, it left a mark. So when they reach out, even casually, we feel validated. Seen again, wanted again, but here's the problem. Being wanted for a moment doesn't mean being valued for the long term. A message can say, "I miss you," without meaning, "I'm ready to love you better." It can mean, "I'm lonely," without meaning, "I've grown." It can even mean, "I regret losing you," while still being unwilling to do anything to keep you. And if you respond from emotion without clarity, you risk falling back into the exact same pattern you once fought to escape. This is the space where old wounds reopen, where your hope outpaces their effort, where their inconsistency gets mistaken for intention, and suddenly you're back in the loop, the late replies, the mixed signals, the disappointment. A true commitment takes more than a text. It takes ownership. It takes the willingness to have hard conversations, to do the uncomfortable work of rebuilding trust, to show up, not just once, but consistently. A message might spark a dialogue, but it's not a declaration of readiness. It's not a plan. It's not a promise. You have to look beyond what's easy. Anyone can miss someone. Missing someone is passive. It's emotional gravity. People miss others all the time and still do nothing about it. The real question isn't do they miss me? The real question is what are they doing about it? Because missing you isn't enough. Wanting you isn't enough if someone can reach out but still not step up. You have to ask yourself why you'd risk your peace for that, and it's not about bitterness or building walls. It's about boundaries. It's about recognizing that your healing isn't something you hand over just because someone remembers you exist. It's about protecting your progress. It's about requiring more than breadcrumbs when what you want is a full, honest, loving connection. Sometimes that message is just a test to see if they still have access. Sometimes it's about control. Sometimes it's not even conscious on their part. It's just comfort. You were once their safe space, their favorite distraction, their emotional cushion, and they want to feel that again, even if they're not prepared to offer anything back. That's where your strength comes in, to pause, to breathe, to ask, what do I need right now? What do I deserve? To not let a short message undo all the long nights you spent rebuilding your self-worth. because you're not here to be a temporary fix for someone's confusion. You're not here to be reopened like a favorite chapter in a book they never intended to finish reading. So when that message comes, because it might, don't rush to answer it with your heart. Listen to your values. Remember who you were before them and who you became after them, and then decide not just if they deserve a reply, but if they deserve you at all. It's a strange moment when someone who left you suddenly comes back. The silence is broken. The space they created with their absence is filled again, this time with just a few words. Maybe it's a late night message. Maybe they watched your story after months. Maybe they say they've been thinking about you, and before you know it, you're not just responding to the message, you're responding to the possibility. You start to remember the good parts, the way they made you laugh, the spark you felt when they walked into a room. You remember your conversations, the way they held your hand, the way you imagined a future together. The version of them that lives in your memory, the one you've idealized in their absence, comes rushing back. This is where it gets dangerous, because in that moment it's easy to ignore why they left in the first place, or why they stopped calling, why you cried yourself to sleep questioning what you did wrong, why you felt like you were never quite enough for them to choose fully. All of that fades into the background while fantasy takes the lead. Romanticizing the return is when you create a story around someone's comeback that's built more on hope than truth. You don't see what's happening, you see what you wish is happening. You turn a message into a sign. You turn their apology into a promise. You take the fact that they miss you and treat it as proof that they've changed. But missing you isn't the same as valuing you. Regret is not the same as readiness. And reaching out doesn't always mean they're ready to do the work. People come back for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes it's about them, not you. They're lonely. They're going through a breakup. They're bored. Their ego is bruised, and they remember how safe and soft you used to be, so they return not out of growth, but out of discomfort with where they are now. And when you romanticize that return, you risk walking right back into a pattern that you worked so hard to break. It's not because you're naive, it's because you're human. Love is vulnerable, memory is powerful. We all want to believe people change. We all want the story to circle back and redeem the pain, but hoping for a different outcome won't make someone new. If they haven't evolved, if they haven't done the emotional labor, the same issues will resurface, just dressed in better timing and softer words. You might find yourself explaining away their past behavior. They were going through a lot. They didn't know what they wanted. Maybe I gave up too soon. But if you're doing all the justifying and they're doing none of the owning, it's not reconciliation, it's repetition. You owe it to yourself to see clearly, not to be cynical, but to be careful, to not let a familiar face make you forget the unfamiliar pain it once caused. Because the version of them you're in love with might be the version you created in your head, the one who would have stayed if only life hadn't gotten in the way. But real relationships aren't built on if only. They're built on presence, consistency, accountability. And if someone truly returns with the intention to be different, they won't need to be romanticized. Their actions will speak louder than your fantasies ever could. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to remember the good. It's okay to wish things had turned out another way, but be honest with yourself about what's really in front of you, not what your heart is hoping to see, because the moment you start creating a version of them that doesn't exist, you stop protecting the version of you that deserves better. Let their return be a reality check, not a fairy tale. Let it reveal what's real, not what's rewritten. And remember, what you long for in someone else should never cost you what you've built within yourself. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small, invisible moments. The nights you don't reach out, the days you stop checking their social media, the mornings you wake up and no longer feel that sinking feeling in your chest. You may not even notice it at first, but bit by bit, something shifts. The silence that once hurt becomes peace. The space that once felt empty becomes freedom. And without realizing it, you begin to rebuild a life that's no longer centered around someone who walked away from it. This kind of progress is sacred. It's not loud. It's not always obvious, but it's powerful. It's the quiet return to yourself after you've been pulled away by emotional chaos. It's remembering your worth in the absence of someone who once made you question it. It's the resilience you earned by sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it. And most importantly, it's the decision you made to choose yourself, even when they didn't. So when someone who once caused that chaos suddenly returns, you have a choice to make. Not about them, but about you. About the version of yourself you've fought to become in their absence. About the growth you've earned. Not because of them, but in spite of them. There's a reason their silence hurt. There's a reason you had to grieve, and there's a reason you're standing here now, steadier than before. The moment they reach out again, everything you've built is suddenly on the table, your emotional balance. Your hard won self-trust, your new perspective on what you deserve, and it's easy to forget that when a familiar voice says, "I miss you," because there's a part of you that still wants to be chosen, that still wants to believe this time it could be different, that maybe their return is proof that the love you gave wasn't a waste. But wanting to be chosen again is not the same as being loved right. And being missed is not the same as being seen. You worked too hard to get here just to be pulled back into what broke you. Progress is fragile, especially when it's fresh. It's tempting to test it, to see if you can revisit the past without falling back into it. But revisiting something that cost you your peace almost always comes with a price. You might tell yourself you're stronger now, and you probably are, but strength isn't about whether you can handle the pain again. It's about whether you're willing to protect the peace you earned by walking away from it. You don't have to hate someone to say no to them. You don't have to feel anger to set a boundary. You can care about them and still choose not to give them the version of you that they couldn't show up for the first time. That's not bitterness, it's wisdom. That's not pride, it's self-respect. You don't owe your healed self to the person who triggered your healing. You don't owe a conversation, a second chance, or a door left open. You owe yourself the consistency that they couldn't offer you. You owe yourself the safety you had to create on your own. And you owe yourself the dignity of not abandoning the very progress you made just to see if they've changed, because sometimes they haven't, sometimes they just miss the way you loved them, the way you made them feel whole, the way your presence filled the gaps in their life they didn't know how to fix. And it's flattering to be missed, but don't confuse being needed with being honored. Don't confuse their reach with their readiness. You are no longer the same person they left, and that's the point. You grew, you healed, you unlearned patterns and expectations. You learned to sit in silence without chasing noise. You became more grounded, more aware, more intentional. So when they show up again, you get to ask yourself, not out of fear, but from clarity, does letting them back in serve the person I've become? Because the goal isn't to prove you've healed by welcoming them back. The goal is to protect that healing, even if it means keeping the door closed. The person you fought to become is worth guarding. That peace is worth keeping. That's what real progress looks like. When someone comes back into your life, especially after distance or silence, it's easy to react from the part of you that still remembers how it felt to be close. Emotion kicks in before logic does. The sound of their voice, the familiarity in their words, the attention you thought was gone. It all rushes back like it never left. And in that moment, you don't think, you feel seen again. Desired again, like maybe the story isn't over yet, and maybe it isn't, but here's the problem. Emotion alone can't answer that for you. Emotions are natural, they're powerful, they're real, but they're also unreliable guides for decisions that require clarity. When someone reappears, the most important thing isn't how you feel, it's why they're here. What do they want? What are they really offering? Are they here to rebuild or to revisit? These are questions emotion won't ask. Emotion only remembers the connection, the laughter, the spark. Emotion only hears "I miss you" and wants to believe that it means "I want to be with you." But those aren't the same thing. Intent is where everything becomes clear. Intent is what shows up in someone's behavior, not just their words. It's not what they say in the first message. It's what they do after it. Anyone can say they miss you. Anyone can apologize. Anyone can tell you that they're thinking about you, that they still care, that you're different. But what's the follow-through? Intent isn't about what they felt during the time apart. It's about what they're willing to do now that they're back. Are they reaching out because they've taken time to reflect, to grow, to take responsibility? Or are they reaching out because it's convenient, because they're lonely, because they want comfort without effort? You don't evaluate intent by listening harder to their words. You evaluate it by watching their consistency. Do their actions match the affection they are expressing? Are they moving towards something real with you, or just circling back to a feeling they miss? It's uncomfortable to ask these questions when you want something to work. It's easier to lean into what you feel than to examine what's true. But if you don't evaluate intent, you risk building a future on a fantasy. You risk stepping back into something that hasn't changed, simply because you're reacting from the softest part of your heart. It's okay to feel, it's okay to care, it's even okay to admit that part of you still wants them, but don't let that part take over the conversation. Invite reason into the room, invite clarity into the moment. And instead of asking, "Do I still love them?" ask, "What are they doing now that proves they're ready to love me right?" You're not the same person who used to settle for hope over effort. You've learned what it's like to be left wondering. You've learned what it feels like to give your all and get half-hearted attention in return. You've learned that words without action are just echoes. You don't need another lesson in disappointment. You need evidence. You need alignment between what they say and what they show. So the next time someone from your past reaches out and stirs up all the feelings you thought were gone, take a breath. Don't move from nostalgia. Don't act from desire. Sit with the emotion, acknowledge it, and then gently put it to the side. Look at their intent. Not what they tell you, but what they prove through presence, through effort, through the energy they bring now. That's where the truth lies, not in how they make you feel for a moment, but in how they treat you when those feelings wear off and the real work begins. You can still feel deeply and think clearly. You can still love and set standards. You can still open your heart without handing over your judgment. Because when you evaluate intent, not just emotion, you give yourself a chance to choose from wisdom, not just warmth. And so I leave you with this: your emotions are valid. They're part of what makes you human, loving, open, and real. But they aren't always the safest place to make decisions from, especially when the past comes knocking with familiar words and uncertain intentions. You don't have to harden your heart to protect it. You just have to ask better questions. Look for actions, not memories. Pay attention to effort, not apologies. And above all, stay loyal to the version of you that no longer settles for almost. Because love isn't just about how someone makes you feel in a moment. It's about how they choose to show up consistently, clearly, and completely. When that moment turns into something real, thank you.